White heavy checkmark disclaimer. English for YouTube Storytime video. This story is a fictional dramatization inspired by real-life emotions and experiences. All characters and events depicted in this video are purely imaginary. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, is purely coincidental. This video is intended for entertainment purposes only and does not promote or encourage inappropriate behavior. Viewer discretion is advised. It all started on a rainy Thursday night. The kind of rain that made the streets glisten and turned the world into a blur of headlights and reflections. We had just finished dinner at my best friend's house. A small gathering, nothing special. Her younger brother, Ethan, was there too. 19 years old, quiet, polite, and surprisingly grown up compared to the last time I saw him. I had known him since he was a kid who used to trail behind us, trying to be part of our conversations. That night, my friend had a little too much wine, and everyone else had already left. I was the only one sober enough to drive. When I offered Ethan a ride home, it felt like the natural thing to do. He lived just a few blocks away. My friend gave a casual thanks and didn't think twice about it. Neither did I, at least not yet. We got into my car, and the silence was heavier than I expected. No music. Just the hum of the engine and the tapping of rain against the windshield. I glanced over at him. He was looking straight ahead, his face illuminated by the dashboard lights. He looked older somehow. Not like the teenager I remembered, but like someone with thoughts deeper than his age. I tried to break the silence with small talk. "Still going to community college?" I asked. He nodded, then turned to me slowly and said, "Do you ever feel like you're just living on autopilot?" The question came out of nowhere, caught me off guard. It wasn't the kind of thing a teenage boy usually asks, especially not someone like Ethan. I smiled politely and shrugged it off, giving a vague answer. But inside, it hit me harder than I expected. Because yes, I did feel that way. Every single day. As we pulled into his driveway, he didn't immediately open the door. Instead, he turned toward me, his eyes serious, searching. "Thanks for the ride," he said softly, but there was something more behind those words, something unsaid. We held that gaze a second too long enough for something silent but powerful to pass between us. It wasn't romantic, not yet, but it wasn't nothing either. Then he stepped out into the rain, gave a small wave, and disappeared into his house. I sat there for a few moments longer, staring at the door he had just walked through, my hands still on the wheel. I had no idea that what just felt like an ordinary ride would be the beginning of something I would never be able to explain to anyone. Not even myself. That ride home should have been forgettable. But somehow, it became the moment everything started to shift. The days that followed that rainy ride home felt strangely different, like the atmosphere had subtly shifted and only I noticed. I told myself it was nothing, that I was reading into things that weren't there. After all, he was just Ethan, my best friend's younger brother. I had no reason to keep thinking about him. But the truth is, I did. The memory of his voice, the weight of his question, and the way he looked at me before stepping out of the car. They stayed with me longer than they should have. It wasn't that anything happened, but something almost did, and it left a kind of emotional fingerprint I couldn't wipe off. Then came the unexpected moments. I began running into him more often, at the local cafe, outside the grocery store, or while visiting his sister. Each time felt like a coincidence, but part of me wondered if he was doing it on purpose. Or maybe I was just noticing him more now, noticing things I hadn't before. It was during one of these run-ins that something happened I couldn't ignore. I had dropped by my friend's place to return a book. She was out, but Ethan was home. He opened the door, smiled, and leaned against the frame like he'd been expecting me. "You always return things," he teased. "Most people don't." I laughed, and he invited me inside for just a minute. I agreed, telling myself it was harmless. We talked for a while, nothing too deep. School, work, music. But it was in those quiet, in-between moments that it happened. One glance, one long, unblinking look. It wasn't flirtatious, and it wasn't awkward. It was intense, focused, like he was seeing a version of me I didn't even show my own reflection. I felt seen, completely, uncomfortably seen. And I didn't look away. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just something happening on his side. This pull, this tension, this unspoken something, it was mutual. And I hated that it was. I hated that my heart fluttered the way it did, that I looked forward to these unexpected moments, that I wanted them to happen again. But I couldn't talk to anyone about it. Not my best friend. Not even myself, not really. Because admitting it, even in silence, meant acknowledging that something forbidden had taken root. That a boundary had started to blur. Later that night, I found myself staring at the ceiling, wide awake. I kept seeing his eyes, that lingering glance, and the quiet comfort I felt in his presence. It was wrong. It was foolish. It was addictive. Something had started. Not a relationship, not an affair, but a crack in the wall I had built around myself. A quiet betrayal of what was supposed to be. And deep down, I think we both knew this wasn't going away on its own. It was a week later when everything tipped over the edge, quietly, without any warning, the way most irreversible things do. My best friend had invited a few of us over for a casual backyard cookout. Nothing fancy, just grilled burgers, string lights, and a Bluetooth speaker humming with old pop songs. Ethan was there, of course, helping his sister set up chairs and carry drinks from the kitchen. I tried not to look at him too much. I really did. But every time our eyes met, just briefly, it felt like something louder than the music was playing between us. As the evening wound down and people began to leave, I offered to drive a couple of guests home. My friend thanked me, completely unaware of how familiar this was starting to feel. Ethan didn't say much as I returned. He was sitting on the porch steps, scrolling on his phone, looking up only when I walked past him. "You leaving already?" he asked softly. I paused. "Just grabbing my bag." "I'll walk you to your car," he said. And so he did. It was quiet outside, the kind of quiet that wraps around you and dares you to speak too loud. We walked slowly, the gravel crunching under our feet. When we reached the car, I turned to thank him, but he spoke first. "You ever think about that night?" he asked. I didn't have to ask which night. I swallowed. "Sometimes." "I do too," he admitted, voice low. "More than I should." For a moment, neither of us moved. The wind picked up slightly, and a few leaves skittered across the driveway like secrets trying to run away. Then he leaned back against my car, looked up at the sky and said, "I know I'm younger, and I know you probably think this is just some teenage crush. But it's not. You listen to me. You see me. No one else really does. Not even my sister." I didn't know what to say. His honesty hung in the air like fog, heavy and hard to see through. I could feel my heart pounding, my logic screaming at me to stop this before it became something I couldn't undo. But then I said it. Words I didn't mean to let out. "You're not a kid anymore." He turned to face me, and that was the moment we came dangerously close. Not in distance, but in possibility. His eyes searched mine, waiting, asking without words. I didn't lean in. I didn't run away either. "I should go," I whispered. He nodded slowly but didn't move. As I opened my car door and sat down, he bent slightly and said, "I'm not trying to make things hard for you, but I had to tell you." And then he walked back up the driveway, not looking back. I drove off, my hands shaking. His words echoed in my mind all the way home. "You see me." And that was the problem. I did. The days that followed were some of the most confusing of my life. Nothing had technically happened. There was no kiss, no touch, no promise. But something had been exchanged between us that night in the driveway. Something real, fragile, and impossible to ignore. And suddenly, everything around me felt unsteady. I started questioning my own emotions in silence. Was this just a fleeting feeling? A byproduct of loneliness? Or was there really a connection growing beneath the surface of right and wrong? I hated that I didn't have answers. And I hated even more that I wanted there to be something. I didn't see Ethan for a while after that. I avoided going to my friend's house. I dodged invitations and kept my distance. I told myself space would solve everything, that this would pass like a momentary fever. But it didn't. Instead, It lingered like a scent in the room after someone's left. Faint, haunting, and inescapable. And then one afternoon, I saw him again. I was out running errands and stopped at a small bookstore I used to love but rarely visited anymore. I wasn't expecting anyone I knew, especially not him. But there he was, in the aisle between psychology and poetry, flipping through a book like he belonged in that quiet space. For a moment, I stood there just watching him, debating whether to walk away before he noticed me. But I didn't. He looked up and smiled. "Hey," he said, like we hadn't left anything unsaid, like we hadn't stood in a driveway, hearts racing, dancing around something neither of us wanted to name. "Hi," I said, my voice softer than I intended. He walked over, book still in hand. "I was hoping I'd see you," he admitted. We talked for a while. About books, life, his classes, my work. And even though the words were casual, the space between us was full of all the things we didn't say. The tension wasn't sexual, it was emotional. It was that quiet, invisible thread that stretches between two people who feel too much but say too little. After maybe 30 minutes, I told him I had to go. He offered to walk me to my car. Again. This time, we didn't say anything when we reached it. We just stood there, both knowing something had returned, something we never fully let go of in the first place. He didn't ask to see me again. He didn't need to. I drove home with one hand on the wheel and the other clenched in my lap, trying to hold on to my composure. I kept thinking, what am I doing? What are we doing? But no matter how many times I tried to talk myself out of it, I couldn't shake the truth. Something was happening between us. Something that refused to be named, but was growing louder with every stolen glance and accidental meeting. It wasn't a game. It wasn't even an affair. It was the slow, quiet unraveling of rules I never thought I'd break. It was a Saturday evening when everything finally shifted, so gently and so naturally that it didn't feel like a mistake until much later. I had spent the whole day cleaning my apartment, trying to stay busy, trying to push the thoughts away. I hadn't seen Ethan since the bookstore, but his absence filled the room like static, present in everything even when invisible. Around 6 p.m., my phone buzzed. "Ethan, hey, I'm near your place. Just came from the campus library. Thought I'd say hi if you're free." I stared at the message for several minutes. I knew I should say no. I knew opening the door, even just for a quick visit, was a decision. But then I typed back before I could stop myself. "Me, sure. Just me here. Come up." 10 minutes later, there was a knock. When I opened the door, he was standing there in a hoodie, holding 2 takeaway coffees. "I remembered how you said you never drink enough caffeine on Saturdays," he said with a sheepish smile. I laughed and let him in. We sat on the couch, sipping coffee, watching the last light of the sun stretch across the hardwood floor. Our conversation started off light. School gossip, a funny podcast he listened to, my work drama. But it didn't stay light. Not for long. At one point, I made a joke about always being alone on weekends, and he looked at me. Not amused, not playful, but deeply serious. "You know, you shouldn't be," he said. "Shouldn't be what?" "Alone. You have this way of being around people, like you're present, but always holding back. Like there's more of you that no one gets to see." I didn't know how to answer that. No one had ever said something like that to me. It was the kind of thing that made you feel seen, and also vulnerable in a way that was terrifying. We fell quiet for a while. Not awkward, just still. Then I said something I'd never planned to say. "I think I've been holding back for a long time," I whispered. He looked at me. "Me too. I don't remember who moved first. I just know one moment we were talking, and the next his hand brushed mine. Just fingertips. Barely a touch. But it lit a fire across my skin. He didn't rush. He didn't lean in fast or aggressively. He just looked at me with a kind of honesty that disarmed every wall I had. And then, finally, we kissed. It wasn't passionate or dramatic. It was slow, unsure, and trembling. A question and an answer all at once. And when it ended, neither of us spoke. We just sat there, stunned by what we'd done. Something had changed. A line had been crossed. Not by accident. Not with confusion. But with intention. I didn't feel guilt. Not yet. Only clarity, and a calm, haunting knowing. This wasn't just a moment anymore. This was a secret being born. The morning after felt like waking up in a different version of my own life. Nothing looked out of place, and yet everything felt altered. Like something invisible had shifted in the atmosphere. The room still smelled faintly of coffee and rain. The cup Ethan used was still on the table. But he was gone. He had left quietly, without waking me, and somehow that made it feel even more real. The night replayed in my mind over and over again. The way he looked at me, the quiet between our words. That kiss, not reckless, not rushed, but deeply intentional. There was no denying it now. We had crossed the line. Not in lust, not in rebellion, but in something quieter, heavier, something that felt like it could ruin everything. I didn't tell anyone. Who could I tell? Not my best friend, Ethan's sister, who had trusted me with her brother's ride that first night. Not my other friends, who would immediately ask if I'd lost my mind. And certainly not Ethan, not right away. We didn't speak for a few days. No texts, no calls. But his silence didn't feel cold. It felt careful, like we were both trying to figure out what this meant. When we finally did talk, it was brief. He messaged, "You okay?" I replied, "Yeah. Are you?" He responded with a single heart emoji, and nothing more. But the pull between us didn't fade. If anything, it grew heavier. Every time I saw his sister, I felt it pressing down on me like a weight strapped to my chest. Every time I smiled at her, joked with her, acted like nothing had changed, I was lying. And the worst part was I was getting good at it. Ethan and I started texting late at night. It became our secret ritual. Nothing too obvious, memes, random thoughts, playlists. But the subtext was always there, pulsing under each message like a heartbeat. We met a few times in quiet places. Park. A bookstore parking lot. Inside my car where no one could see us. We never talked about what we were doing, not directly. Maybe because naming it would make it harder to deny. Or maybe because the second we labeled it, it would become real enough to destroy. Still, there were moments that felt too perfect to be wrong. The way he listened when I vented about work. How he remembered the small things I said weeks ago. The way he looked at me like I was something rare, not just wanted but understood. And yet, the guilt never left. It sat behind every smile I gave his sister. It shadowed every laugh we shared. She didn't suspect a thing. Not yet. But I could feel the cracks forming in my own ability to keep this hidden. I was splitting in two. One version of me lived in the daylight, laughing and normal. The other lived in the margins, in the stolen spaces Ethan and I carved out for ourselves. The weight of that secret was growing heavier by the day. And I didn't know how long I could carry it. It was bound to happen. I think I always knew that. Secrets don't stay hidden forever, no matter how carefully we protect them. And the longer you carry one, the more it bleeds through your voice, your eyes, your silence. I had been walking a tightrope for weeks, balancing between my feelings for Ethan and my loyalty to his sister. Eventually, something had to snap. It happened on a Sunday afternoon, during a casual gathering at his sister's apartment. A few friends, takeout boxes on the table, drinks on the counter. Ethan was there too, sitting across from me. We were careful, always careful, but maybe not careful enough. It was just one glance, one moment too long, one smile too soft, and she saw it. She didn't say anything at first, but I saw the flicker in her eyes. That shift from confusion to suspicion. She barely spoke the rest of the evening, and when everyone had left, she asked me to stay behind to help clean up. I could feel the silence pressing down on me as I stacked plates and avoided eye contact. "You and Ethan," she said suddenly, her voice low and flat. "Is there something I need to know?" My heart dropped. I froze. The air in the room turned cold. I could feel my pulse pounding in my ears. I wanted to lie. I wanted to say she was overthinking it, that there was nothing going on, that I respected her too much to ever, but I couldn't speak. And the silence became my answer. Her eyes filled with disbelief, then hurt, then fury. "Are you serious?" she whispered. "He's my brother, Rachel. My little brother. How long?" I tried to explain that it wasn't planned, that it wasn't about age or betrayal or anything ugly, that I hadn't meant for it to happen. But none of it mattered. She backed away like I had physically hit her. "I trusted you," she said, her voice cracking. "I told you everything. I loved you like family." Tears burned my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. I stood there, feeling like the worst version of myself. She didn't scream. She didn't throw anything. She just walked away. From the kitchen, from the room, and from me. I left without saying goodbye. That night I didn't sleep. Ethan messaged me asking what happened. I told him the truth. "She knows," he replied after a long pause. "Are you okay?" I stared at the screen for a long time before typing back. No, neither of us said what would happen next, whether we'd keep seeing each other or walk away. The silence between us wasn't comfortable anymore. It was full of grief. We had wanted something beautiful, something simple and real. But what we created had hurt someone who never deserved to be in the crossfire. And now there was no way to fix it. Not without losing everything. Some truths never find a home outside your heart. They stay buried, not because you want to lie, but because telling them would break more than they could ever mend. That's what this story became. A truth wrapped in guilt. A memory coded in silence. A secret that, to this day, I've never fully said out loud. After that confrontation, everything changed. Ethan and I didn't speak for a few days, and in those days, something inside me cracked wide open. I realized that even though I had fallen for him, deeply and honestly, some love stories aren't meant to be lived out loud, especially not when they cost you people who once called you family. He came to my apartment one night, unannounced. His face was tired, his eyes quieter than usual. He sat on my couch like he belonged there, but we both knew he didn't anymore, not really. "I never wanted to hurt anyone," he said, voice barely above a whisper. "I know," I replied. "Neither did I." We didn't talk about continuing. We didn't talk about stopping either. We just sat there for an hour in silence, knowing what had to be done but not ready to say it. And then he stood up. "I'll always care about you," he said. "I'll always carry you," I whispered back. He smiled sadly and walked out the door, and I knew in my bones that it would be the last time we ever shared that space again. His sister never reached out again. I don't blame her. If I were in her shoes, maybe I'd have done the same. Maybe worse. I lost her that day, and along with her, I lost a part of myself I had trusted too deeply. To this day, people ask me why we drifted. Why she doesn't come around anymore. Why I don't mention her. I just say we grew apart, as friends sometimes do. No one ever questions it too much. No one suspects that buried beneath those words is a story that changed everything. Sometimes, when I pass the coffee shop we used to hang out at, or hear a song Ethan once sang absent-mindedly in my car, a wave of memory hits me. Sweet, sharp, almost like a ghost brushing against my skin. I remember what it felt like to fall in love when I shouldn't have. To want someone so badly, even when you know that wanting them is going to break something sacred. But I never tell the whole story. Not to anyone. Because some things, especially the ones that change you forever, aren't meant to be shared. They live in the quiet corners of your mind, where they can't hurt anyone anymore. So if anyone ever asks what really happened between me and Ethan, I'll just smile and keep the secret. Because not all love stories get an ending. And not all endings deserve to be told. 29.